Sushi is a meal that appeals to the discriminating palate, but it had very rudimentary beginnings. The first sushi was actually a form of food preservation. Salted fish was covered in cooked rice and left to ferment for months and even years. The rice was then thrown away and the fish consumed. A fresh approach came about a century ago, when the Japanese began combining raw fish with pressed mounds of cooked rice. It was a mouth-watering combination and brought something entirely new to the table. Rice is now an essential part of sushi. Sushi chefs use short or medium grain because it sticks together better than longer grain. The rice undergoes a thorough washing. First, the chef swishes it around in water to rinse off impurities. This also begins to remove the rice bran, which has an undesirable flavor and aroma. He drains the rice and adds clean water. Next, he scrubs it with his palm fairly vigorously to remove more of the rice bran. When the water becomes cloudy from the bran, he changes it again. By now, the water has softened the rice, which makes the grains prone to breakage. So he scrubs them more gently this time to keep the rice grains whole. Finally, he rinses the rice under a running faucet until the water drains clear. This rice is now thoroughly washed and ready to cook, so he adds an equal amount of water and a splash of sake and plugs in the rice cooker. The previous day, he seasoned rice vinegar with a strip of dried kombu seaweed and left it to soak up the flavors. The flavored vinegar is key to making good sushi rice. It's what makes the rice sticky. He pours the sushi vinegar into the cooked rice and evenly distributes it with a gentle folding motion to keep each grain intact. He fans the rice and grains dry to a nice sheen. With the rice prepared, it's time for all the raw details. Each fish must be assessed for spoilage or damage. The chef lifts the gills to confirm that the flesh underneath is red and translucent, essentially fresh-looking. He also examines the eyes of the fish. They should be bright and clear. He then prods the skin of this sea bream fish to establish it's firm. Once he's satisfied, he prepares the fish, first scraping away the unpalatable and messy scale with a rasp. Next, he uses the thin edge of a one-sided blade to fillet the fish. Razor sharp, this knife cuts cleanly through the fragile flesh. He slices off and discards the head. He then carves the flesh from the backbone. Now, firmly grasping the tail of the fillet, he cuts the skin from the flesh, using a zigzag motion to pull it away. This technique leaves no flesh on the skin at all, so that not a morsel goes to waste. Using fishbone tweezers, he extracts all the little bones. He now slices the fish on an angle across the grain, using one long stroke that doesn't tear the fibers the way a sawing motion would. The result is a shiny, smooth piece of sea bream. Next, he peels away the transparent outer skin of a marinated mackerel to expose the silvery subskin. The gorgeous subskin is a feature that adds presentation value to the sushi, and it's also tasty. Next, he carves tuna that's been frozen within hours of being caught. This locks in freshness so that when thawed, it's suitable for sushi. And the freezing also kills any parasites in the fish. He chops spring onions into thin rings. They'll be used to offset the strong taste of mackerel sushi. He then mixes water and wasabi powder to create wasabi paste, the pungent condiment that adds kick to sushi. And with all the ingredients prepared, it's time to start rolling, so stay tuned. Once a simple food sold by Japanese street vendors, sushi has gone uptown. Today, skilled chefs produce bite-sized morsels with gastronomic artistry. A blend of color, texture, and taste, sushi appeals to the eye as well as the palate. The chef moistens his hands to keep the rice from adhering to them as he works. He dabs wasabi and places a ball of rice on one of the tuna slices. He pokes a hole in the center of the ball to introduce air. This keeps the rice from compacting as he shapes the fish around it to make a type of sushi called nigiri sushi. To form nigiri, the chef works swiftly to minimize the fish's exposure to his touch. Human body temperature is much higher than room temperature, and prolonged exposure to it would compromise the fresh taste of this sushi. A little pickled ginger to cleanse the palate, and this sushi is ready to serve. To make cucumber rolls or kappamaki, he carves the outer part of the cucumber into a long, wide ribbon, stopping at the soft core. He slices the ribbon in two and layers the pieces. He then chops the cucumber into uniformly thin sticks. This exposes more of the vegetable's fiber to maximize the taste. This is roasted seaweed called nori. He places it shiny side down on a bamboo rolling mat. He lightly presses rice into a ball so the grains stick together as he transfers it to the nori. He spreads the rice evenly, leaving a margin of nori at the top. And now he's ready for those expertly sliced cucumber sticks. He groups several in the center of the bed of rice. Then, gripping the mat on one side, he folds the nori around the fillings. As he squeezes the pack, some rice spills into the margin of nori at the top. But there's still enough space to create an overlap and seal the ends of the nori around the fillings. Using a wet cloth, he tucks in the overflow at both ends. He slices the roll in half. He aligns the halves and slices 3 times to create 6 pieces. Each piece approximately the same height for an attractive lineup. Next, he makes uramaki, a kind of sushi with rice on the outside, which is why they're also called inside-out rolls. He spreads rice evenly over the nori and flips it around to the shiny side. He dips a finger in wasabi and spreads it on the nori at midpoint. He arranges tuna on the wasabi-coated section. The raw red fish is then paired with slices of avocado for a tantalizing contrast. He folds the rice-coated nori over the fillings and tucks it around them. He continues rolling until he reaches the edge. He garnishes the rice with toasted sesame seeds for visual interest and tasty crunch. He covers the roll with plastic to protect it from the grooves of the sushi mat as he shapes it into a tighter pack. He then removes the mat and carves the inside-out roll into bite-sized pieces. Inside-out sushi was invented in the 20th century to appeal to Westerners who preferred not to see the nori. The final thing on the menu is the hand roll, also known as tamaki sushi. He presses soft rice into the crispy nori and layers the next ingredients diagonally over the rice: wasabi, a Japanese herb called shiso, and 2 pieces of tuna. He folds the nori around the fillings to contain them in a seaweed cone. Now all that's left is the presentation. And when it comes to sushi, less is more. Over-garnishing can detract from the main event, the fish. A simple, artful arrangement puts the focus on its raw appeal.